Children equal chaos. This is why my mom bribed my sister and I with popcorn chicken from the deli whenever we went grocery shopping, and why my aunt shops solely online. While I only babysit other people's kids, I understand the chaos that is linked to children. Sometimes I go into babysitting feeling like Mary Poppins and leave looking more like the Mad Hatter. Despite the stress, I love children. I jump at almost any chance I can get to invest in little ones. This summer, I'm so glad I accepted the opportunity to watch Landon and Parker. Their mom works night shifts and their dad works during the day, which leaves a 2-hour gap from when their mom leaves for work and when their dad comes home. This job has been such a perfect fit for me and a learning experience. As I said, children equal chaos. It goes without saying that almost every night I come home with a lesson learned and a story to tell. From my experiences, I have 5 must-know rules for babysitters. These guidelines will help any babysitter wrangle the chaos makers and embrace their worth. Rule number 1, never introduce a game you don't want to play more than once. Landon and Parker didn't want to play Candyland again that day or do another puzzle, so we headed to their room, which is packed full of toys. I spotted the mountain of stuffed animals and thought, this is perfect. I grabbed one and threw it at them gently. With this simple action, I had created a monster. Soon enough, I was in the heavy crossfires of stuffed animals. I literally shielded myself with a giant stuffed bear. This could have been more tolerable had I not underestimated how hard stuffed animals are and how much strength a 3- and 5-year-old have. I was outnumbered and apparently much too weak to fight off the never-ending shots. Memories of my junior high years came back to me. PE class was my worst enemy, and not because I wasn't athletic, but because of dodgeball. My strategy of hiding in the corner because I refused to willingly be hit by other people always ended in me being one of the last team members still in. All the boys on the opposing team would throw as hard as they possibly could to get me out. It always left me with an enormous red spot somewhere on my body, which leaves me the question why I thought stuffed animal dodgeball was a good idea in the first place. Rule number 2, be prepared when it comes to craft time. I never expected 2 boys to love craft time so much. Parker had a meltdown one evening when his father had come home and we hadn't done crafts yet. He was still crying when I left. Both Landon and Parker's favorite part of craft time is painting. Without a doubt, every single time I get that tub of craft supplies down, they ask to paint. One day, I gave in. The first problem was Landon didn't know how painting worked. He just scooped some paint on his brush and painted a little on his paper and then went in for a new color. I showed him the brush needed to be rinsed first so that the colors stayed pretty. I turned to help Parker for a bit, only to see soon after Landon is leaning over his wet painting to reach the water. But the damage was already done. Loose spots of paint covered his shirt. So I took his shirt off and went to rinse it in the sink. I look over and see Landon now painting his bare stomach. So here I am with a paint-stained shirt and now a boy painting Starry Night on his bare stomach. Rule number 3, never negotiate with terrorists. When it comes down to bad behavior and timeout, never negotiate. If there was a terrorist who had just bombed the United States, you wouldn't say, well, because you say you'll never do it again, we'll let you go, free of any punishment. That person chose to act that way, understanding the consequence. They are not exempt from the punishment just because they're sorry. My 4-year-old cousin was sitting at the dinner table one evening, supposed to be eating the spinach on his plate. Instead, Isaac chose to chew it just enough to get it mushy and spit it out on the floor. His punishment was he had to finish the rest of the spinach on his plate or go to bed. He sat there, silently waiting for his prey. He pounced on my dad, who tried to convince him in the sweetest tone to eat just one bite of spinach. My mom, immune to the manipulation of a 4-year-old, sternly told my dad, "We don't negotiate with terrorists." My dad just busted up laughing. While this might be a bit extreme, there is wisdom in not giving in to their guiltiness they try to cover with irresistible cuteness. I'd say I have succeeded in the timeout area of babysitting. Many years of child evangelism fellowship and watching my younger cousins has trained me well. One of my most proud moments was when Landon was on the basement steps in timeout for throwing plastic toys at his brother. After a few minutes in timeout, I usually ask them if they remember why they went there, along with a few other questions. I went up the stairs to begin talking with Landon, but before I could even say anything, Landon says, "I think I'm ready to answer your questions." Rule number 4, always convince them to do it themselves. In all the movies that I've ever seen that have a babysitter, the teen tries as hard as they possibly can to avoid interacting with the children. They are there for the money and to simply keep the kids alive. While I am not encouraging this behavior, I do believe there is a point where you need to step back. I am not a bug person, and I never will be. I'm still trying to get over my fear of butterflies. Yes, butterflies. I'm doing much better. I only flinch when they come out of nowhere. In fact, one year for my birthday, my mom got me a giant butterfly kite. She must not have been aware of my fear because the day we went to fly it was traumatizing. In my mind, I was running away from a giant predatory creature. But my fear of butterflies pales in comparison to Parker and Landon's favorite bug, the grub worm. I can easily handle the average night crawler, but grub worms are a whole different story. If you have never seen one, they have ghostly white bodies, a hard red head, and they don't have any legs, and since they're so chubby, they just roll around from side to side to get places. These disgusting creatures are what Landon and Parker wanted to hunt for 2 weeks straight. Most of the time we went to the gap between the cement for the garage and the driveway. They would use screwdrivers and poke around in the hole until one of the grub worms came flying out of the crevice. I made sure to keep my distance. Rule number 5, remember actions speak louder than words. Since getting to know Landon and Parker, I have learned that I'm easily annoyed by whining. I never get frustrated with them, but I can only handle so much. The boys don't really like to talk, and instead they like to point and whine for what they want, which can be helpful, because when Landon does choose to speak, it can sometimes be difficult to understand. My favorite word that Landon says is yeg for leg. Some days I go to pick up Landon from daycare and he wants to take 15 minutes to finish his last 2 Cheez-Its. There are other days that he's a little grouchy because he just woke up from a nap, and by the time I get him buckled in and headed to pick up Parker, he says from the back seat, "I don't like you." But I think he just likes saying it, because there are other days that I walk into daycare and I see Landon run around the corner with a huge smile on his face, and I pick him up and he whispers in my ear, "I like you." These are the moments I treasure most. I love the days where we can talk about silly things, even if a 3-year-old is telling me it's okay to eat people as long as they're cooked. I love the days where we can have tickle fights, and maybe even the ones we do stuffed animal dodgeball. But most of all, I love the days where I can sit on the couch with Parker on one side and Landon on the other while we watch Paw Patrol. These are the moments I cherish most because actions do speak louder than words. Even if timeout and craft time seem like utter chaos or I'm forced to hunt grub worms, I love Landon and Parker. And I am so unimaginably grateful for the opportunity to not just babysit them, but to influence their lives as I know they have mine.